My name is Cole Hunter Dzubak. I am a playwright being featured in the Talking It Out Festival with my piece Hoplo. And if you want to learn more about my play in particular, listen to this conversation. I fell in love with theater. When I first fell in love with theater, it was more acting in general. I wanted to be an actor since I was 5, and it was the show Drake and Josh. Just I loved it as a kid, and I think it was more for me than making people laugh, and I wanted to do the same thing. So from there, it was I knew I wanted to act. And then I think my parents took me to my first show when I was 8, and it was a stage adaptation of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and it just blew me away. I was just so immersed in it. I wanted to. I knew that's what I wanted to do, and I think just being in the theater world in general, there's never another option. Like kids grow up wanting to be a firefighter or an astronaut. I always wanted to be an actor. I never had a backup plan. Like growing up, it was always every year when my teacher asked me, it was always, I'm going to be an actor. I'm going to be on stage. I'm going to be in movies. So it was always, that was always the plan. There's never anything else that I was going to do. So when I got to my senior year of high school, I applied, I auditioned as an actor. I'm an actor by trade first, I'd say. And then I guess I started playwriting professionally, if we want to call it that, 3 years ago. And at the same time I started playwriting, I also started as a scenic carpenter. So I kind of have 3 main areas that I focus in. But just in terms of being in the theater world, it's always been where I want it to be. So there was never really an exact moment where it hit that this is what I wanted to do, because that was always the plan. I fell in love with writing. So I was 18 turned 19. It was the fall. It was the spring semester of my freshman year at college. I attend Michigan State University with the BFA in acting. And that semester, one of our professors just held a one-off playwriting course. And I went to him, and I don't think any other freshmen were in the course. I went to him in the fall and was like, can I take this course, please? It seems really interesting. I've always wanted to write. I've always had a love for storytelling. I mean, I wanted to be in theater, so there's always a love for it, but I've never really knew how to get my words on the page. So he let me do the course. And right away, I'd say it was an interest up until I took that course. And then as that course was going on and when it finished, it was an obsession. I wanted to continue writing. The first play I wrote in that course made me fall in love with just sharing stories. It was called Type 1, and it's a play about the rising insulin prices in America, and it's about a type 1 diabetic learning that he's not going to be able to afford his insulin, which is semi based off personal experiences. I'm a type 1 diabetic as well, so I definitely use that story quite a bit in my writing. And I think being able to put my experience on the page is really comforting. I was diagnosed the day before I moved to MSU for my freshman year. So that was 2 big life changes happening at the same time. And it was difficult. I didn't talk about it a lot, and I kind of internalized my coping. So being able to write that story was a really big deal for me. And it really, I think that my interest in writing became an obsession because I was able to put what I was feeling out on the page, and it was like I was saying how I've been feeling, and it was really freeing for me. So I kind of take that approach in a lot of my writing, is if it's something's on my mind, and I don't want to say it, I can write it, and people will be able to hear that. So yeah, I'd say that piece in particular was really when it became an obsession. So it was really a really quick turnaround from interest to obsession, but just that I fell in love with being able to write exactly how I was feeling. It's like in musical theater, the thing is, if you can't speak it, you sing it. You can't sing it, you dance it. Kind of that same idea, but instead of singing, I wrote. My process is a lot more unorganized, I'd say, than a lot of other playwrights I know. I've been trying to work on that. I'm really organic in the way I write. So I'll write like mini outlines if it's a bigger project, but typically I'll come up with the idea and I'll write as I go and I'll edit as I go, which for some people that drives them crazy, but for me, I feel like the more time I spend like talking and writing down outlines and stuff, like that's energy I can be putting into the work itself. Um, so I want to make sure I get all of my creative, like all those creative juices onto the page and into dialogue, into the story, rather than like putting it on another document that I have to keep going back to, keep working on that. So I really start in forms of idea. I take from my own experiences. I do a lot, I'd say, political commentary, especially around immunocompromised persons and the diabetic experience. So I'll take those experiences and I'll put that on stage. I have I have a lot of shows about that. But I'm a big fan of adaptation and inspiration type work. I use music and I use the tone to really help influence the way I'm feeling. One of my pieces that was put on last year in a play festival at MSU, I got from the mood of a song, and the song's about finding the okay in a bad situation. That mood is, it's really soft and it's really gentle, but it's also really aggressive at the same time. And I really took that general idea and was able to incorporate just not even the lyrics, just the music. And that helps shape that piece so much. So I definitely use music a lot just to like help. If I don't know exactly how I'm feeling about the piece, I'll go through like my playlist and find what kind of matches what I want to say. That's kind of helped me to get through those roadblocks. In terms of finally getting it on stage from that idea, then very organic and just I want to get everything on the page as quick as I can. Typically my first draft is all of my first ideas and first thoughts, and then I'll just do readings. I'll get my friends together. Being in the theater department with all actor friends is great because I have people that just want to come in, people who want to come and act. So I'll do readings. I'll get notes. I'll write a couple drafts in between, have them come back and read it again, and just go from there. I'm in a great place because I have people that want to do this. So that's really beneficial. But that's really that last in between from idea to stage is having people read it and giving me feedback and then going from there. Just keep doing that as many times as I need to before it's in a good spot to be on stage. I think I first heard about it. It was the beginning of this year. And I saw I'm in a whole bunch of Facebook playwright groups. So it was like the end of last year, beginning of this year when the submission was, and somebody just posted the submission for it. It was the first time I've heard of this festival, but just reading about it, I think I was so entranced by the idea of it. I think mental illness is something that isn't talked about enough. Of course, coming from a place of looking at like me with my disability that I believe isn't talked about enough, I really related to that idea of, people don't know enough about it. There's a lot of negative and really harmful stereotypes out there that people don't fully understand. And I could relate to that. And I mean, I've had mental health struggles in the past as well. I've seen people struggle. I've seen people harm themselves. I've seen people lose their lives because of issues like these. And it's not an easy thing, but I think when I saw it, it just reminded me that that I have a story to tell and that I need to, when I write my shows about my condition, it's because I want to educate people and I want to remind people that this is an issue that they need to worry about. And when I saw this opportunity, I think that was the thing that ran in my head, is that I need to be a part of this because I need to remind people that this is still an issue and that we need to continue making these steps. We need to make further steps than where we are now. So when I saw that, I knew this was something that I was going to do. I had the perfect piece to submit, and I'm really happy. The piece that is being presented, Hoplo, I just finished like a fifth draft of it when I found this submission link. So I was really fortunate to have just finished working on this really, really close to my heart piece that worked perfectly for this festival. Where did the story idea come from, and why did I need to write it? The story came from a less meaningful place, I'd say. I was in a 30-day playwriting challenge. In one day, the prompt was write about a phobia, and I found the list of every phobia that's been diagnosed, and I chose a random letter, and I chose a random one in that letter, and I ended up landing on H, and then landing on hoplophobia, which is the fear of guns. And that's where the idea birthed from. When this all happened, though, it was the 2-year anniversary of Douglas Stonewall shooting. It was the 5th year anniversary, or around the 5th year anniversary, there was a shooting in my hometown that killed one of my classmates. So I think when I landed on that word of just out of pure randomness, it reminded me of all these things that I've lived through. I've lived through a lot of seeing in the news of different places going through this horrific thing that is a live shooting. And I don't think it's talked about in a sense that I think a lot of people are numb to it. You see a lot of things where a new tragedy like this happens, and it's like people react in a way of like, that's another one. I think as a kid, I remember it being more of like a shock when these types of things happened. And at this point, people seem so numb and undisturbed, for lack of a better word. Just kind of like there's no hope anymore. They're so numb to it. It happens so often that they just expect it to happen. And that's really what I wanted to tackle and focus on, was that idea, the idea of losing hope. And I knew I wanted to tell a story that brought that hope alive, that, things are bad now, but you have to find the good at the end of the tunnel. I think the main character I named Hope for that exact reason, just that extra piece of symbolism. But it's a short piece, but you see a really big journey of, at the beginning, not being sure, not having hope that she can continue on and live a normal life. I mean, I hate to say that phrase, but like when you go through something like that, like a lot of things change. And at the beginning, she doesn't know, she's not sure, but by the end of it, you really see a full arc. You see her grow. There's hope for the future. There's hope that she can move on and grow from this experience and be able to live her life without being able to move on from what happened. And that was my main goal, was to tell a story that inspired people that, yeah, things are really bad now. But if we work together, there's hope that things will get better. I think that was a really important story to tell, especially when I wrote it, and still now, I think it's still really important to tell. I think it's still something that people struggle with, whether in context of being in this tragedy or in any other context. Being a survivor of suicide, being a survivor of addiction, overdose, anything like that. People lose hope for all different types of reasons. The story's universal in that way. that sometimes you have to fight to find that hope, but there is always still hope in some amount, and you just have to find it, and you have to hold on to it as hard as you can. I want the audience to take away a few things. Of course, going back to the idea, there is hope. I talked a lot about that. And I'll talk shorter here, but like, yeah, I mean, I want the audience to come out of that show hopeful. That whatever struggles you're going through, whatever struggles people you care about are going through, no matter how bad things may be or how bad things you perceive to be, there is hope that things will be better. That's a big thing. I think I just want audiences to leave the show too, knowing that this is still an issue. Not even just the tragedy of, a live mass shooting, but also that just mental health in general, that a lot of people struggle with it. I don't think people think about how many people in the world struggle with mental health issues, mental illness in general. There's a lot of people out there struggling in different ways, and I want people to come who see the show to leave and think, my next door neighbor who waves and says hi every morning with a smile on his face could be struggling in some way, and just remember to be kind to people. When I was in school, right, we had, I think every year in high school we had the assembly about, not the anti-bullying assembly, and they show us a video of a whole bunch of kids and their stories who would end up committing suicide because they were bullied. And one of the big takeaways was always saying hi to someone could be that thing that makes their day better. And it's, in high school, I know kids thought that was silly, but growing up, living through experiences of my own, seeing all this stuff on TV that's terrible, like, yeah, sometimes that can make a person's day. Just a simple act of kindness, a hi, a hello, a smile, a handshake. Sometimes that's all somebody needs. And I want people to leave the show knowing that kindness wins. We're in a weird place now where sometimes I think some people have forgotten that kindness will always triumph at the end of the day. Sometimes maybe the battle's longer, but if you're kind to somebody, things for that period of time are going to be fine. So I want people to really remember that people are struggling, and just a simple act of kindness can really make all the difference. I think that's a really big, important lesson that people need to remember. I think a lot of people have heard that before. I think people need a reminder that is still relevant today. What am I looking forward to? I'm really interested to see what other types of stories are being told. Like I've mentioned before, there's so many different issues out there, different things to talk about, different mental illnesses, different reasons that people struggle the way they do. I'm just curious to see what other people had to say when they saw this prompt, when they saw this festival. I'm curious what inspired them. I think for me too, like I want to know other ways I can help. I want to go in. Yes, I'm excited to see my work, and I want to see the response that my work gets, but I also want to go in as a viewer, and I just want to learn. I want to listen. I want to see what other people had to say. I think as a playwright, I think I got that as an actor. As an actor, I wanted to go and watch theater to learn from the actors, from the performers themselves. And now that I've become a playwright. It's really like it's like a switch in my brain. Like sometimes I'm looking, I want to watch what the performer's doing, and then I can just flip something in my head, and then I'm listening to what they're saying. I'm looking at, I'm looking at the set. I'm looking at how certain characters interact with each other and how they interact with others in learning as a playwright. And that's really what I want to go into this and see all these other shows, see these other stories, and really just learn, see what made these characters act the way they do. And I think with this festival in particular, I want to just learn how I can help others outside of this. You know, obviously I'm not perfect, and I'm not going into this thinking I'm going to come out perfect, but I want to be able to be better prepared if I run in situations similar to the stories that are being shared. I want to have that knowledge. I think people should come to this festival because it's important. There's a few reasons. It's important. Everything that's being talked about and shared, the stories being told, are majorly extremely important. Like I said earlier, there aren't enough people that know all of these things. I think, again, people don't know how big of an issue this still is. I think it's important that people come see this just like that as a reminder that this is still something that we struggle with. This is still something that we need to put our best foot forward on and really start making a difference, really start making an impact in people's lives. And I think people need to come see it because this is, we're at a turning point for theater again. Theater was virtual for a long time. But I think virtual theater is becoming a new part of our norm, and I think that's absolutely amazing. Because there are people out there that can't access the theater. They can't get to the theater. I think people need to see the show because it's a reminder as well that that we are now being able to broadcast to a larger audience, and I think that's important because that means that we can get help from more people. We can educate more people through this platform. I also think it's important because I think this is happening at a perfect time, with the Talking Now's main base being in New York. Broadway's coming back, theater's back on the rise in so many capacities now. And the arts are important. Live theater, whether you're seeing it in the auditorium itself, or you're watching it over Zoom, or you're watching it through a YouTube link, a Vimeo link, you're watching it on your computer, both experiences at this point have the same weight and level of importance. It's live theater in general. Like we are watching people we're watching playwrights put themselves into these stories. We're watching these actors really engulf in these characters. We're watching, the work that directors put in. Countless hours of how do I make these playwrights' words come to life? How do I give the actors the tools they need to do that? It's so vastly important. I think being a theater artist, I think it was vastly underappreciated before the pandemic. And I think having to do, with 2 years of virtual theater, I think people understood how important this was. People missed this. When Zoom theater became a thing, I saw showcases where for one performance, hundreds of thousands of people were watching at once. Like, obviously you can't do that in an auditorium and have that many people in one space. People miss this, and it's important. Theater's important, and people need to come watch this because it's important. Why is Talking It Out so important? Why do we need the community's help and support? It's important because it's touching on issues that not many people want to talk about. I think because people don't know a lot about, mental illness, people don't understand sometimes the issues and struggles that people have. Something they want to brush under the rug. They don't want to talk about it. Not necessarily they want to forget it exists, but it's just something they're going to put on the back burner. I think, I think it's important that this, these types of festivals, and especially Talking It Out, gets that support because they're doing hard work. They're raising awareness. They're spreading these stories that other people may not want to do, that some people may not want to see, but that's extremely important. There's a lot of things there's a lot of things in this world that are important that people don't necessarily want to talk about or know enough to be able to talk about. I think it's, you know, this is for theater, this is for raising awareness, it's also to educate, so people can leave this and thinking, you know, maybe it sparks, oh, that I really loved that piece and what they talked about. I wish I knew more ways to help. We have Google. People can do a quick Google search after this and find ways to help, find organizations that they can go to and donate to or support or volunteer for. I as a playwright, I want to write about things that people aren't talking about enough, that I don't see in theater. And I want to, you know, raise that awareness. And that, you know, that's another thing that excited me about this festival is I had a place to be able to show some of my very vulnerable work and help educate, help spread awareness. And, you know, not a lot of people, I think more people need to be willing to do that, have the hard conversations. And I think that's why, you know, that's why festivals like this, like Talking It Out, need that support from the community, because it is a hard conversation, but we're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to make strides. We're not going to make an impact unless we do have these hard conversations. Why are local theaters important, and why do the communities need to support them? I could go on and on. I've been rambling a lot. I have a lot to say, but I'll try to keep it, you know, somewhat, so I'm not talking for an hour. Just theater. I think something that I love about theater is that you can put I love movies as well. You know, I do some screenwriting and acting as well. You can put on a movie and you can watch it over and over again, and you can relive all those good memories. You can watch a movie from when you were a kid and have that nostalgia. And that's great, but you can't necessarily do that with theater. And I think that's so awesome that we have this form of entertainment that is a one and done deal. And that's exciting, because then you go and see one show and then, you know, you get so encaptured by it, and then you need to see the next one. And then all of a sudden it's like this not downward spiral in a bad way, but like all of a sudden it's like that snowball effect. You're going down the hill and now you've seen one, and now you got to see the next one. You got to see the next one, and you just got to keep finding ways to fill that need to see people do it. See people do it for real. See all the hard work people put in to perform for you for 2 hours, 3 hours, an hour, depending on the show, depending on what is needed. It's a lot of hard work. You know, I don't think people like to, you know, make fun of, you know, the theater world. Like, oh, it's not, you know, artists aren't needed, but like we are. During, you know, looking at the pandemic, you know, people had to stay inside. What were we doing? We were watching Netflix. We were on Spotify. That's all things artists are doing. People were reading. That's authors. Those are playwrights. You know, we are important, and I think communities need to recognize that and remember that maybe more. So when you have all these local theaters, I mean, I've made some good friends in community theater. I made some good memories from my local community theater. I had one of my first big singing roles in a musical at my local community theater. I played Will Parker in Oklahoma, of all shows. It's important. They make memories. They, you know, they're important to the community. Just, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but like they're needed. They're really needed. I think they make a lot of difference that people don't recognize. I think I've seen theater change people's lives. I've seen people who, you know, didn't feel like they had a purpose, people who needed that extra push, people that needed an extracurricular to give them something to do in their free time. And when they came across theater, you know, there's like a shift, you know, in who they were. and their person, all of a sudden, like, their personalities just changed, and they were more upbeat. They're willing to get out there. They're willing to challenge themselves. And theater's a hard thing to do. If you're an actor, you were out there for 2 hours, and some of the stuff you're talking about can be extremely vulnerable. It can be extremely hard, and that's a very challenging thing to do, to put yourself out there like that. If you're a playwright, I mean, these are your thoughts you're putting on the page. That's an extremely hard thing to do. And you're looking at like a director. I mean, you got to do all this planning. You're working with a design team for months in advance, for hours and hours out of your day. Then you're working with the actors in rehearsal space and bringing them to the performance space. And, you're putting your soul into that too. Yeah, you're not the one on stage. You're not the one who wrote the show, but you are combining all of the efforts of so many different components. That is hard work. Like, there's a lot that goes into this, and it's all that is important. It gives people something to do at the very very least. It is giving people things to do, giving people a reason to get out of bed. And maybe maybe you're a student and you don't have a job, you go to school, you don't have anything to look forward to, but maybe they have rehearsal that night, and that could be the reason that their day was made. People need to support this stuff because it's important. It changes people's lives. I do have a fun story about just a good playwriting aha moment. Yeah, when I think my first show, Type 1, this is a really big, that show helped me realize that this is something I wanted to do, writing that show. But I think a really big defining moment for me as a playwright, just in the sense of, this is something I can actually do and make an impact with. So it was, I had my first, that show was my first, my first stage reading, my first performance in general of any of my written pieces. I was so excited. It was at a play festival done at MSU. One of our student-led production companies called Second Stage Productions through the Department of Theater. My show comes on. I'm on the edge of my seat. Obviously, I wrote it. I'm hearing these words spoken out. I had my friends who were acting in it. So I was just so excited. And I sat back. The show's, they say the last line, blackout. And I sit back, and I was so proud of myself. And I looked to my left, and there was this girl my age, probably maybe not too much older, and probably was a student. I've never seen her before, and she was crying by the end of my piece. And I don't know this person, but what I wrote, what my friends did with my script made an impact on her so much that she was crying. And that is such a big moment for me. I was so happy that the story that I needed to tell made that, even if it was one person, I'm still made an impact in somebody's life. I made an impact in their day. And that was really that was that defining moment of I can do this. I can maybe not make a big living, but I can do this. I can get work out there. I can make an impact on people. So that was really cool. And I think that gave me a lot of confidence going into every other submission opportunity, every other festival, every other, residency. That moment, I remember that moment in particular is the moment I felt the most confident about any piece of theater that I've done. So I think for the rest of my creative career, I'm going to remember that moment as the moment that defined me as an artist, at least as a young artist. And I think that's an important story and lesson to share, because it reminds people that we all have our defining moments, our reasons why we do things. And whether, he impacted one person or 100 people, whether you perceive it to be a big or small thing you did, we all have those reasons. We do the things we do, and they're important, and we need to hold them with us. My name is Cole Hunter Dzubak. I am a playwright being featured in the Talking It Out Festival with my piece Hoplo. I hope everybody comes and sees it. I hope everybody comes with an open mind to learn, to listen, to feel empowered. And I hope people leave this showcase feeling hopeful for the future. See you there.